There,
Okay.
I'm there, and that's us. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Conant Show 79? 79 shows. Wow. Okay. And then today is Wednesday, June 6th, 2018. My daughter Lilanona's birthday, and a little shout out to Lilanona. Thanks for being in the world. And I'd also like to thank Paula Gloria Barton, who's tweaking all the cameras and equipment at the moment, as she does on Wednesdays, and chimes in with some commentary of her own once in a while. And we like that. And I have a guest. Oh my goodness. We haven't had one of those in a while, have we, Paula? No. And I'm Nahela?
Nahela. Yes.
Nahela. Okay, it's not a tongue twister, but it's a nice name. Where's it from?
It's a little difficult to say because of the spelling, but Nahela comes from the word Nahele, which was a Native American name.
Aha.
My mom was very interested in the Native American culture.
Well, you have a look.
I'm not Native American.
No?
I would love to be, but I'm not.
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. So, as often happens in the world, and especially my life, things come together in a kind of cosmic, circuitous or serendipitous or cosmic kind of a way, and true to form. Nahela here is brought into the studio by happening to give Paula a ride. And, our guests, we had a bit of a lineup tonight, and because of situations that our guests needed to deal with, they're not going to be here till late. So there was this opening, and here you are.
Yeah.
And Paula had mentioned that you had done a tour in Africa in the Peace Corps.
Yeah, so I was, fortunate enough, only a couple days ago, I was lucky enough to meet Paula. I love to pick people up on the side of the road, bring them to Woodstock. It's my home, it's my family, and I love to meet new people. And Paula was asking me a little bit about what I was doing and where I had been. And just kind of, in the short span that we had talked, I told her about my Peace Corps experience.
Uh-huh.
So it was my dream. I had always wanted to join the Peace Corps ever since I was little, and I worked very, very hard and made it happen. Nice.
Yeah. When was the time period? When did you go and come back, or is this ongoing?
I would love for it to be something ongoing. I'm actually still supposed to be there if I would have been able to complete my service.
Uh-huh.
So I left to start my Peace Corps service July of 2016.
Okay.
And your service is normally 2 years.
Okay.
So that's usually how long you stay in country for, in a village with the locals, and you work and you just do whatever really you feel necessary. Unfortunately, my situation was a little different. There were some factors that, played a huge role. Me personally, I actually got very sick throughout the hot season there. And I was in and out of the capital, so I kept going to the capital to see doctors, and I kept going back to my village, just kind of back and forth. So I was going through a lot, and it was a beautiful experience, but there was a certain amount of months where things were very, very blurry, I feel like, in my vision, and I wasn't sure what to do. I think I wanted to stay, and I wasn't sure what to do regarding my health.
I take it your health has improved and
yes,
you're better and
yes,
feeling good and stuff.
Yeah.
Now in a situation like that, will they allow you to finish your service contract?
So I was supposed to go back. So what they had decided was that I kind of just needed a little break from the heat. The nutrition was very different for my body, so there was a lot of factors playing in there. And I decided to come back to the States for about a month. They usually give you a month. You kind of take a break. And they told me to take everything that was important to me. Because they said, you never know what could happen and you might not come back. Which, of course, was very difficult to understand. To be living in a village for a year and think that you could just leave and not come back and not know what to say and what to do beforehand, I think. So what happened in that circumstance was I did bring whatever was fairly important to me, including my dog, who was my dog in village. And I came back to the States, unfortunately, throughout that time period that I was, let's say, on vacation back in the States. Right. The Peace Corps reached out to me and they informed me that the program was actually being shut down. Oh. So the Peace Corps is open in about 146 countries around the world, opening and closing, so it's an approximate estimation. And I was fortunate enough to be staged in Burkina Faso in West Africa. But unfortunately, there were a lot of terrorist attacks the time that I was there. They weren't directly on smaller villages. It was usually the capital. Right. And larger cities. There was a fairly large terrorist group called the Jihadistes. In French. I wouldn't know how to call it in English. Jihadis, there you go. Okay. Muslim. Oh, okay. So yeah, it was a Muslim group and they were coming down from Mali. And there was another group coming over from Niger. So we were kind of right in the middle of those two countries. And
this country is called?
Burkina Faso.
Burkina
Faso.
I've never heard of it. Is this a small territory or a big territory?
It is. They actually say it's about approximately the size of Colorado.
That's not.
So I don't know.
That's small. It's
exactly. I don't know what that would mean to small or large, but it's because I think it's landlocked, and a lot of people, it gets lost in between of Mali and Ghana and Niger. It's almost lost in the middle of there.
Tell us a little bit of the topography and what the land is like. And
as I said, it's landlocked. So you have Mali right above there, and then you have Ghana right below. And a lot of people don't know exactly what the land is like there. I know when you get closer to Ghana, so closer down in the south, it's more of a, let's say, humid, more wet, more rainy, you have a lot of more green, even mountainous you can find. But in the area where I was, so once you reach the center and then you go up north, then you're in more of like a deserty area and it gets very, very dry.
With this, when you say West Africa.
Yes.
I'm trying to
picture it.
The left or the right. Now the Horn of Africa is East Africa.
Yes. So it's like you have like, it's like, that like the hump on the left.
Yeah.
You would say that Burkina Faso is literally like smack down right in the middle. Like you have Morocco up north, then you have Mali down below Morocco, which is huge. And then right below Mali you have Burkina Faso.
So this is sub-Saharan. The Sahara Desert bumps up against?
It's close. The sub-Saharan is more north.
Further north.
Yes, it's more further north because Mali takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is very dry, but the sub-Saharan area is more north.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then again further south you go, the wetter it gets.
Exactly. I feel like it's that one country that's smack down in the middle between that change in climate. So you really have the dryness up top and the more humid and wet on the bottom, and it really just changes.
It seems like it could be a good thing, I guess.
It is.
Agriculturally, I would imagine.
Exactly.
And I imagine it's a largely agricultural economy there, or
that's all it is.
Tribal economy, and
yes. So.
What was the language barriers like?
So Burkina Faso is a French colonized country. So the main language is French. However, I was very glad to see that although the French did colonize and although that was a language spoken by most, they still predominantly speak their local languages, their local dialects. So actually there was about 60 of volunteers that were in Burkina Faso, and we were all spread around the country. And each of us, I could say that each of us spoke about a different language. There were so many different dialects and so many different versions. I was able to learn Bisa,
Bisa?
Bisa was the language of my people. That was my village.
Wow.
My village was called Komtoega.
Komtoega.
And it was the Bisa people, the village of the Bisa. And that was the language.
That rings a bell. I've heard of them.
Really?
I think. Yeah.
Well, they actually work. They are a community that works a lot with Italians. Very strangely enough, I found this out while I was living there, and a little bit through research of my own. I noticed that people would come to me, and because I was the white person, they would speak Italian to me. So they would yell out "Ciao, bella," to just say random words in Italian, and I was shocked. I was trying to understand why were they speaking to me in Italian. Of course, I would go to them. I speak French, so I was able to defend myself with French mainly, and then learn the local language through that. And they had explained to me, oh, well, we learned Italian because the white people would come and speak Italian to us, and they would help us build schools and help us build communities, and I found out that exact community of people migrated, and they would move through Italy to that specific region in Burkina Faso, and they would work together, different agencies and organizations. And
okay. Chabelle.
Is it close there?
Yes, it's actually the purple country right in the middle below Mali. If you can see that. Yeah. Has like a little hump right there in the middle, and it touches a lot of different countries.
I see
there.
that. It's really not that small of a country. It's pretty good size.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When I applied for the Peace Corps and I got accepted, I had to look it up. I did.
I never heard of it.
I had to look it up. I was like, the first thing I did was tell my mom. I was staying with her then, and she was like, oh, I know where that is. Your father was traveling there. And I was like, where is it? I didn't know too much.
Now I have an interest in archaeology, and I'm wondering, were there any ancient sites there, archaeological import or interest, or that just didn't come up in your experience?
I know that there were a lot of certain areas, let's say, within the country where they cherished or had sort of like memorial grounds for different people. Archaeological wise, I feel like it's almost all archaeological in the sense. It's all so historic and has so much history and story behind it. There's not much tourism, so it's not in the sense that I think our community, our lifestyle understands it to be, I think.
So when I'm kind of referencing any kind of ancient ruins that would be apparent, or did the subject come up at all of older civilizations or ruins or this kind of thing?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, when you think about the modernized world, we built our world on top of other civilizations and the older civilizations, whereas they didn't build on top of other civilizations. They are the primitive civilization.
And they're still there?
They are. They're still there, and they're still living their lifestyle the way that they understand, and the way that they believe is best for them.
A couple of questions. So infrastructure, there's obviously a capital, there's obviously an airport, I take it?
Yes.
And so there's technology, and there's cars, and there's...
To a certain degree, yes.
That kind of infrastructure. How would you characterize that experience? What would that kind of look like?
Well, first of all, when I arrived, of course, I went to the capital. As you said, there are airports. There's one in Ouagadougou, which is the capital, and there's one in Bobo, which is the, let's say, second largest city.
Okay.
And I believe there's a small airport that is only military based or something of that sort. But again, their airport is very, very small. It's almost like a small house type of thing, and you just randomly sometimes have people coming in and out. It's not very busy as you would expect an airport to be. And when you do get to the capital, yes, you're walking up and down the roads. There's no stoplights, there's no stop signs kind of thing. It's kind of just cars and motorcycles and bikes all mixed together, go moving in unison, hopefully not banging into each other.
Livestock on the roads
yes.
too. Yeah.
Oh yes. Not even on the roads, but on the vehicles. Yes.
That's wonderful.
So we would ride in bush taxis, us volunteers, because we were not allowed to ride, obviously, in people's cars or motorcycles for safety purposes. But we would ride in bush taxis, and it rarely would see a bush taxi without a cow sitting on top of it, or a pig, or chickens flying out the window, kind of thing.
That's funny.
I know.
That's great. Just curious, like if there were a most powerful moment for you, unless the whole experience was powerful, what would that be?
That's funny because I had a friend of mine ask me that exact same question recently. And of course, there were incredible, amazing experiences throughout the whole year that I was there. But I have this one moment, and it's not an individual moment. It's almost every single evening that I would spend while I was in my village. I was practically, let's say, adopted by this woman, Davide.
Uh-huh.
And people over there are called by their last name. So her first name is Sophie, but I would know her as Davide. And she took me in. I had my own little hut. I had my own little location. But she, every single day, would come to my house and help me fetch water for myself, help me get settled in, help me with whatever I needed. And she would always tell me, just come to my house and you can sleep, eat, do whatever you want at my house. So I ended up getting very, very close with her, and she was like my mom. Like she was my village mom. And so every single evening, I was an education volunteer. So I would work at the school, and every evening I would go home, leave my work or drop things off, find my dog somewhere running around, and then the two of us would bike over to her house. And every time I'd go to her house, it was the most warm feeling. We would watch the sunset together. All of the village children that lived in that area of the village would come because I was the volunteer, and they would come and they'd be like, "Viens, on va voir un film. Let's go see a movie. Let's go see a movie." Because I had my computer, and they had never seen what a laptop looked like before until I came and I showed them my laptop, and I showed them that we could watch movies. So I had brought a lot of Disney movies and movies that I grew up with, and I put them all in French. And every single evening, I would play a different movie for the children, and there would be at least like 50 children that would be lining up in front of my laptop. So wow. That moment where the sun is going down, there's no electricity, so everything's just turning black, and all you have is the light coming from my laptop. And if you're standing behind my laptop, all you see is the faces of all of these 50 children watching with such intensity and laughter and happiness. And then Davide would be on the side. She'd be watching. She'd be making her soap. And usually I would sit with her and make the soap with her that she would sell at the market.
A lot of stirring. I've made soap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of stirring.
Yeah.
So the rest, it would be that's an interesting thing, the soap making, because it's a very, very old tradition and knowledge. So she would render fat from because you need oil and you need. When I was making soap, I was experimenting with wood ash, and as the alkaline. Right. And but the cheap, easy way is to go out and buy a bunch of lard or olive oil, if that's what you're using, and then lye, and make lye soap that way. Yeah. But in the old tradition, you have a hardwood fires, and you collect the ash, and there's a way of straining the ash through these like a V-shape construction, and you pour water, and as that water leaches through the ash, it pulls the alkaline out of it, and yet that's your builder for this, and then you boil the soap with that.
Interesting. I didn't see that.
I'm interested what she was doing. Did she show you the recipe or discuss it? Because
yes.
It's an interesting thing.
So actually, being the Peace Corps volunteer, I am invited to a lot of different trainings throughout the country. This is just the beginning to get to that. So I would go to different trainings, and I would always bring somebody with me from my village, because the whole purpose is not for me to learn how to do something. It would be maybe for somebody else to learn. Mm-hmm. And again, I learned as well. So with another volunteer prior to when I was there, Davide had learned how to make the soap. So that was something she actually learned because of the Peace Corps, and she was able to start her business and make
see.
money off of that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, from what I had learned with her, it involved oil, it involved olive oil, it involved salt, water, and there's this product, and I think maybe it's more of like a newer product than what you're saying, but it's called Tansajex.
Okay.
And the Tansajex, it's like that jelly. It's like that jelly material that I believe in older times how they
Glycerin.
probably made it. Yeah, something of that sort.
Well, there's lots of different recipes.
Right.
Yeah. The stirring and the stirring and the stirring is reminiscent of rendered fat or olive oil.
Okay.
And alkaline.
Yeah.
Lye. Lye is
Yeah.
a big ingredient, and I was just curious. So she had learned this as a business. So
She
does have to use some purchased products and stuff like that. It's not
Yeah.
like an indigenous.
Exactly. She did.
Thing.
And I believe that was the reason why, is because she did learn it from the Peace Corps, and they had explained to her how to do it with the Tansajex product, which is very hard to get still. You can't just find it anywhere. You have to go to the capital.
Well, yeah, of course.
So it was still a business that was difficult for her to manage. I would go, whenever I'd go to the capital, I would buy pounds of it and try and bring it back, which was, again, very difficult to do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You're going to tell her about your product or no?
Maybe. Well,
Do you have your own product
well,
that you make?
it's not mine. The product is an alkaline surfactant. It's a space age soap, basically.
Okay.
And as a little backstory, my father was big in industry.
Okay.
As a young man, he was an industrial designer, and had worked for Ford Motor Company. And his design credits include the front end of the 1937 and 1939 Lincoln Zephyr,
Okay.
which was a kind of a high-end car in those days.
Yeah.
They brought the Zephyr back. Lincoln brought the Zephyr back, I think, in the 90s or early 2000s for a short time or something. But anyway, but in his industrial experience prior to World War II, he was telling me that the top industrial secret of the day was the toxicity of degreasers, of liquid degreasers, because the problem that was facing industry is the toxicity.
Right.
Because they knew, even going back to the 1920s, that chlorinated benzene, trichloroethylene is the technical name for it today, but it's basically gasoline and chlorine, kind of compounded together.
Okay.
So benzene and chlorine, this trichloroethylene is the industry standard, pretty much still is. And the problem with it is that it doesn't occur in nature, and it's very toxic, and it's carcinogenic, and all this kind of thing. And every factory, everywhere, every day, uses degreasers, liquid degreasers, to clean either the machinery or the parts that they're making, the product that they're making. And then they have to dispose of it. And disposing of it is problematic, because what do you do with this stuff? It doesn't break down in nature naturally, and it's quite toxic. And a friend of mine, Dr. Ward Stone, was the top chief pathologist for New York State Wildlife. And he was the one back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, very active in busting what they call the night rounds, which is the dribbling of trichloroethylene along the highways.
Really?
To get rid of the stuff. And
That's how they would do it, just like dribble it along?
That kind of, yeah.
Wow.
Well, that was one of the ways that was discovered. But anyway, my father said, if you find a liquid water-based degreaser, get on that elephant and don't get off, because that's what they're looking for
Right.
in industry. Because if they can replace the toxic stuff with something non-toxic, not only will they have a cleaner, safer workplace for the people, but they will also solve the pollution problem on the other end of it.
Right.
So, and it was really kind of interesting. I saw my dad in 1977 when he told me this stuff, And by 1980, I was invited to an open house where this gentleman who just recently passed away after a very long friendship tells me, that he had a water-based degreaser that breaks down oil with water, all kinds of oil.
Just out of the blue?
And one of these cosmic experiences. I was actually picking up wine for dinner for me and my girlfriend at the time at the Cornwall Bridge package store. That's what they call them in Connecticut. And the owner there was telling me this guy Andy Nixon has an open house and he's got this environmental product. You should go check it out, George, because I was very big on the environment and all this. And that started a 30-year relationship.
Wow.
And I did a lot of think tanking with him, and I started my own company as a result of it. Since 1984, I've had Turtech, which is Turtle Island Technology, and this ties into my relationship with Native Americans. And I started my company on an Indian reservation.
Oh, wow.
And I have the rights to make, use, and sell and private label this technology. Mm-hmm. And it used to be called Activate Technologies, and now it's Nuance Solutions. And the originator of the product is a guy by the name of Dr. John Flanagan. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we call it Flanaganium. We have a lot of different names. My product, I call it Earthshine, but basically it's common feedstock materials that are combined in such a way that you have 3 electrical charges in the world. There's negative, neutral, and positive. And in soap making, it's been well known for a couple of centuries now that you have to have at least 2 different charges in your soap. If you look on like Dawn dish detergent, you'll see ionic and non-ionic surfactants as part of the ingredient list.
Right.
Well, ionic is referring to electrical charge.
Okay. I did not know that.
I
don't know too much.
I learned so much.
I see that.
From soap making.
Yeah.
I don't make the soap. I buy it in components. It's a 2-part thing, and I just add water. And the super concentrate from the raw materials. The super concentrate is 95% water. So you're already mostly water, and it's still very, very powerful.
Yeah.
So my journey has been trying to get this product to the people so that we can not only replace the toxic products, but clean the environment as well, and that's where the story gets really weird. So
it seems like you have so much experience in that field. You'd be a great source of help and just information for anybody.
Unfortunately,
all over the world.
my experience has also led us into the land of industrial motivations.
Okay.
And one of the industrial motivations isn't really to clean the place up. It's actually poison is a weapon. Poison is also a weapon and a tool. And one of the things that I experienced was when Valdez. Do you remember that? What that is? Do you know what that is?
Valdez.
The Valdez Oil Spill occurred in the probably before you were born.
Where was
in the 1980s, and that was in Alaska, the port of Valdez, and it was a major tanker, huge tanker. So it would have been 1985, 86, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly when. And it leaked millions of gallons of crude oil into the Alaskan coastline.
Right.
And there's the Kodiak Islands, and then there's the fishing areas around it were pristine wilderness areas, and this was all tribal areas that were, protected for their hunting and fishing and so on.
Right.
And it was also targeted by the oil companies for offshore drilling, but they couldn't because it was protected. Mm-hmm. But after the spill, it was contaminated and it lost its standing as a protected area. So they're in there drilling and made a ton more money than they were supposed to pay in fines from the profits that they made from drilling in what was once a pristine wilderness area. I was on the phone with the commander of the Coast Guard in the area.
Okay.
And I said, this is what I have. It works in salt water. It works in the ocean. It's non-toxic. And not only that, you can scoop it right off the ocean. And what happens with this crude oil on the water surface is that it asphaltizes and it gets very thick. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but it's cold because of the nature of the Alaskan Gulf of Alaska. So what they were doing is they had these huge skimmer ships, but they would get clogged, and they'd have to use steam to blast the stuff through. But it wasn't mixing. And he said, boy, could we use your stuff.
So they bought.
And they really wanted my stuff.
So they got some?
Mm-mm.
No.
I get a call back within 12 hours. And he goes, I don't know what you guys got, but kid, I can't use it. Somebody very, very high up doesn't want us using this stuff. And this became more and more interesting to us because we saw, as time went by, that they didn't want this spill cleaned up.
Exactly.
We had
they
a guy,
knew that your product would
a
work.
fellow by the name of Mike Donner, another one of our associates with the company, went up to Alaska, to the Mars Cove and other places where they were cleaning animals with Dawn dish detergent,
Of
right?
course.
And we come in with our stuff, and the hippies in Mars Cove were so freaked out at how fast we were cleaning these animals that they kicked us out. There had to be gasoline in there. There's no way that this product is non-toxic. Nothing cleans like that. It's a breakthrough technology. So we had so many barriers because oil and water doesn't mix in the paradigm of thinking. Mm-hmm. So you have to, no, it mixes now. No, it doesn't. Yeah, actually it does.
It's interesting, though, that they would kick you out for something that was working just because of their shock.
And then around the year 2000, I was on a boat in Long Island Sound, attending a reception for a anniversary party for my in-laws, mm-hmm. and I got to pitch my product to the top boat operator that skims spills in Long Island Sound and other places in the Northeast.
Right. Yeah.
So I give him my pitch, what I had and what it does. 5 minutes into it, he said, I got to stop you. I can't use your stuff. And he goes, you'll put me out of business. I said, I make money moving the stuff around. The stuff is toxic. It's expensive to move around. Who's ever liable has to pay me to move that stuff around. And I soak it up in oil pads and all this stuff, and I got the booms. But I don't want, if we make this stuff disappear,
Yeah.
because that's what my product does, is it breaks the oil down to the atoms, literally down to the elements, and nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen. It's gone. And
It's interesting how these safety factors, these factors that happen in our lives, we cause them. We know that they're bad or they're dangerous, or we talk about them on the news and all over the world, but then something comes out where that can change it or better, and we're too scared because we know that it's going to cause changes in our economic life, for example.
Yeah. Actually, it's more sinister than that, but I won't really go there because you're so young and idealistic, and I don't want to ruin your day. No, seriously.
We need a break too.
Yeah, we need a break too. So, I would love nothing more than to be able to assist, a nation or a country like that. My focus has been two places, Cattaraugus, which is the Seneca Nation of people, and then up at a place called Akwesasne, which is the Mohawk
Mm-hmm.
Nation. And I did do quite a bit of commando remediation of the environment with my product on both reservations. And much to the chagrin of the EPA and the federal government, who don't have jurisdiction in those territories. So I got to put something into the environment and actually prove that it works.
Right.
I can't do that to this day in the mainstream area because in these jurisdictions that are controlled by our federal and state and county governments are all bound by these regulations that it all has to be, vetted and tested for toxicity. Even though it's AAA rated, non-toxic. That's not the same as non-toxicity for applications in the environment.
Yeah.
So just a shrimp brine test is 12 million. The bar is so high that a small company like me just can't afford the environment. Even a big company would have a hard time affording the battery of testing to get an approval for a product to use in the environment.
Right.
But then you have ExxonMobil and stuff down in the big spill in the Gulf of Mexico from that drilling rig, right? And they're putting the most toxic degreaser on the surface of that of the water to in the same kind of application that mine would have been used in the Gulf of Alaska.
Yeah.
Poison is a trade. It's like human trafficking. It's profitable. The poison is profitable, unfortunately. The thing is so's the non-toxic is hugely profitable, and it's cheaper
In the long run, but we just don't see it.
Up front. Up front, it's cheaper. It's soap. It is simply soap made from common feedstock materials. It's just that John Flanagan got all 3 electrical charges into one molecule. And it's like a buzzsaw when it comes in contact with a hydrocarbon like oil.
I see.
Where else can we go here?
Can you refresh how she was making soap?
Well,
What she was doing versus what you were talking about?
Well, yeah,
Because
now-
she said for thousands of years, these people have lived this way.
well, no,
Well, the soap.
Please, go ahead, yeah.
The making of the soap was something that was learned through the Peace Corps. So prior to that, they either I don't know, but they either weren't using soap, they were clean with just water. As an example, toothpaste doesn't exist in the country where I was. I can't say Africa or I can't say
sure.
West Africa.
Where you were located.
Exactly.
Sure.
So, for example, toothpaste doesn't exist. I know that in the capital, in small boutiques, you would be able to possibly find toothpaste, which is what I did for my own purposes. But it was not very well known. And I would ask Dabere and some people in the community, what do you do? And I would see that there was this specific tree that they would run across every once in a while. So
a neem tree? Was it a neem tree? In India, they use neem.
They do have the neem trees, actually, in Burkina as well. I can't remember if that was the same tree that they were brushing their teeth with, but I know that...
chew on a twig and it would make a little thing. And then you could...
Exactly. So they would just run across every time we'd go biking into town, into the village, or onto the market or whatever.
What was the general health like of the village you were in? What was their health like, generally?
Generally low. Generally fairly poor.
Poor nutrition.
Lots of factors. Poor nutrition. Poor education in the health world, let's say. And that was a huge, the majority of the projects and things that I did were focused around health education. The majority of the people knew that malaria existed, but nobody really did anything for it or against it, let's say. I lived in the health unit, so there was sort of like a very small wall that surrounded a couple buildings, and my hut was inside of that wall. And next to my house was the health building, so like the hospital or the doctors, but there was only one for the whole village. And people would come constantly, and children, adults, everybody. The major cause for health issues was malaria.
Malaria?
Yeah.
Parasites?
Parasites, yes. Surprisingly less, and what I understand the reason to be, is because their bodies adapt to the parasites that they live around. So, for example, my water had to be filtered, but they could easily drink the water from the pump or from the well or from the lake, and there would be no problem. They wouldn't get sick, even if there were particles of parasites floating around. But me, one sip of it, and I would get sick for days. So their bodies were very adapted to everything in their environment, which makes sense. If you're born in a certain environment, any human animal adapts.
Describe for us their stature, what they look like.
So every tribe, they said it was very interesting. It was a very popular conversation because the time that I was there, I was trying to figure out how to differentiate people from different tribes.
Okay.
Which was very difficult for me. I mean,
in a lot of the customs, there'd be like tattoos.
And they do that. They do a lot of facial tattoos, actually. So that was something I was able to find out is, talk to them about facial tattoos. And then I was also able to realize that there are actual different physical differences between people. So there were other tribes where the people seemed to be a lot taller.
Okay.
Or...
Were you considered tall by their standards?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm fairly tall. I'm 5'7". I was fairly tall for the people in my village. Yeah. The women there are, I was definitely one of the taller women. I worked a lot with children, so of course they were a lot smaller, but even teenagers are known to be women or adults, so it's hard to differentiate sometimes. That I would meet mothers and they would be teenagers.
If you were to go back on your own aegis, on your own power and authority, how would that work, or could it work? Is it a place that you really can't go unless you're with an organization? No.
Anybody can go to West Africa. Anybody can go to the Burkina Faso. Anybody can go to Comtuega if anybody would like. Of course, they do need that health, apart from your passport and your visa, they need a health certificate proving that you've had all the necessary shots and all of that. Could
you tell us about that? What are these vaccines and precautionary shots consist of? What's the battery? What are they?
So I had to take a lot of them because, funny enough, I come from a very liberal, very Woodstock background. My mom did not believe in the vaccine shots when I was a child, and she preferred to keep me away from all of that. And I was a very healthy child. I wasn't catching anything. But then when I wanted to join the Peace Corps, they were like, "Oh, well, you need all of your vaccines. I've never had any." So it was pretty much lots of general things, all the hepatitis, B, A, C.
How did your body react to all that?
It was difficult. I remember getting 3 in one arm and 4 in another arm.
They did it like that?
Oh, yeah.
They didn't give you one a month for...
Oh, no. Because I needed so many, and some of them need boosters. So I would get 3, 4 at the same time in both arms. And then a month later, I'd go back for maybe 2 boosters in one arm and 1 in the other arm, for example. So it was a couple intense months before the Peace Corps. I remember I did get a slight fever, and if the fever had it was for yellow fever. The yellow fever vaccine had given me fever, but it didn't turn into anything serious. Of course, it was something I was monitoring. But at the time, I was working as a waitress, so I needed my arms, and it was very difficult to work. Very, very difficult.
Oh, they got swollen? You had reactions?
No, I just couldn't lift my arms. Oh my God. I know. It was really painful. I'm not saying this so that people get scared about taking all these vaccines. I had to take them all at once. I had a limited amount of time, but a lot of people do have their general vaccines and just need maybe a booster of some sort. So it was just a lot for me in general. But it was worth it. It was.
Do you dream of this village?
I think about it all the time.
You think about it, but in your sleep time, in your dream time, have you had a dream connection to it?
I have. Funny enough, all of my dreams are always filled with people. Just like every dream I have, it's a party, it's a lot of people, there's a lot of people involved. So the location, no, but I have dreamt of the people because I think the people are what I've had the most impact. That had the most impact on me. Better said.
Sure. I bet.
I know I've met incredible people all over the world. I've traveled a lot and seen so many beautiful things, but the people like the people I met in Burkina, I've never come across anywhere else in the world.
I take it they're a gentle folk, huh?
They are actually. Burkina Faso, in the local language, means the people with integrity.
Wow.
And that's the best way I could translate it to. And I actually named my dog after the country. My dog's name is Burkindi, which means integrity.
Yeah, Burkindi.
Yes.
So did they have any traditional songs or dances and things that you were privileged to see or participate? So they're singing all the time?
All the time. I mean, everything there is, my village was 50% Muslim, 50% Catholic. And there was a small animist group as well, but mostly Muslim.
Now the animist would be the indigenous ways?
Exactly, yes.
And I suppose amongst them there would be the medicine people?
Yes, correct.
And there were medicine people?
There were lots of medicine people.
Did you get any contact with any of those folks?
I tried. They are very... the animist group is actually a very difficult group to...
approach?
To approach, yes. And especially being from a different culture, the Western world, it was a little bit more difficult for me. I remember I was trying to get these bulls carved as a gift for my family, and the animist people are the only people who knew how to do that. So I was having friends come help me talk to them.
Oh.
But I did meet a lot of them at the market. The market's this outside beautiful place, and in the market they would sit there and they would have all of their different medicinal natural produce right in front of them. And you could come to them and tell them, oh, this hurts, or this is broken, or this and this. And
roots, barks, berries.
Pretty much all things like that. Yeah, I have so many pictures.
So that's really good that they have a pharmacology left in their culture. That's wonderful.
It is. It can be at times, strangely enough, because I was so close to the health sector. There were a lot of stories that I heard where that was being used in a negative way,
like witchcraft.
In a sense, yes. In a sense of witchcraft. For example, I'll just give you a slight story. I knew this young girl from the school, and she was married, and her husband went away for a trip, and while he was away, she was impregnated by somebody else. And the only person that she told was her mom, because she was scared and didn't know what to do. And her mom told her, found a natural medicinal I don't know what it was, something, yes, and she told her daughter to drink it, and it would kill the fetus inside, kind of thing. And the daughter did not know that it was so toxic to her body that it actually killed her as well, but the mom did know. So it was a very, very weird. The mom was
Muslim?
Yes, they were Muslim, and the mom was purposely doing this.
This was an honor killing.
Yes, because she betrayed her husband. So it was. So again, those, and there are multiple stories. This one was the most impactful for me because I did know, not very personally, but I did know who the family was, and it was a very hard time to overcome and to have heard of that happening.
Wow. Whew.
I know.
Real life, up front and personal.
Oh yeah, lots of stories of real life. I always tell people, I've ever since I've been back, it's always, how was your experience? On a scale of 1 to 10, did you love it? Did you hate it? How were your experiences? And my answer is always, there's no gray area. If 10 is the most incredible experience you could have, and 1 is the worst experience you could ever encounter, everything that I went through there was a 1 or a 10. There's no gray area.
Sure.
So it's really real, all the stories.
Wildlife, animals, what did you see?
So, I mean, I wasn't too fortunate. I'm a huge animal person, and I love animals, but I wasn't exactly very lucky in that sense. People always ask me, oh, did you see monkeys? And I don't know, lions and tigers and bears kinds of things. But there was a huge park semi near my village, obviously not very close, but it was slightly near my village, where tourists or other Africans would go and see all these animals, such as elephants and giraffes and such. It was a more tourist location. Us volunteers were forbidden to go to that park.
So this wildlife reservation.
It's more of a reservation. The problem with it is that it was one of the locations where a lot of attacks were being done because a lot of tourists would go.
And I imagine there would be poachers as well.
Exactly.
So it was a
Yes.
dicey
It was a
proposition.
Exactly. So that was a location we were not allowed to go to. So mostly just in village. I did see monkeys. There are monkeys that roam around, and they're fairly cool. They just kind of hang out, and they're not exactly aggressive, obviously, unless you show them aggression. Lots of dogs, lots of cats, and it's just like the best way to picture it is just if you're living on a farm all the time,
Okay.
a huge giant farm.
So there's a lot of farms,
Pigs
livestock,
and pigs and cows
wandering
and,
around.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would wake up in the morning and find a cow or a donkey literally standing right next to me, kind of thing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and Dabere had a huge. She had a pig family, so my dog would always play with the pigs and stuff. So
I had a pretty funny spring and summer of 1980 maybe in Connecticut, where I ended up camping in the farm, in the cow paddock pasture in Cornwall Bridge, Dodie and Phil Wolf's place, and they had a collie. The cow was what do you call a juvenile cow that hasn't had that hasn't been bred yet? Heifer?
oh, the cow that hasn't been bred.
It hasn't been bred yet. She was. It was still like a 1,500-pound animal, and it was very playful.
Okay.
And the no-see-ums. Do you know what no-see-ums are?
No.
They're biting gnats that you can't really see.
Oh, that's not fun.
They all jaws is another one. But they have them around here. Do you ever feel like something biting you and you scratch and there's nothing there? That's
yeah.
a no-see-um.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, my tent. I would wake up in the morning and it would just be covered with no-see-ums where you could actually see them. I mean, they were just. And you have to dope up with all the
Oh yeah.
fly repellent and bug repellent and mosquito repellent and everything. But Collie the cow was so funny. I built this barricade around my tent, and she'd get through it anyway.
Of course.
And snuggle up and sleep at my feet.
The cow.
And I could and against my tent, here's this huge, adolescent animal, which is dangerous, as adolescents are, just so gentle and cognizant of me, not to like roll over and break my leg. I mean, it was that
Wow.
kind of that kind of proximity, and of course cows are hot, and I could feel the heat come off this animal, and then sunrise would come and it's time to get up and get ready and go to work and stuff and play dodge the cow because she wanted to play.
That's so funny.
And since it was a mountainside, it wasn't like that bucolic rolling hill
Right.
and grasslands. It was kind of a rugged field,
Right.
With a steep pitch on one end of it and lots of trees. And she was more like a buffalo than a cow. I mean, just very, very agile. I mean, I couldn't believe how agile and how fast this thing could run. I mean, I had to really bolt to get to the next tree, And so there's always every morning, for that, maybe 1 or 2 months that I was there camping out, I had this whole little, pattern going on with this cow that would sleep at my feet and then play, chase George out of the paddock in the morning. But yeah, it's really kind of neat how living with animals like that kind of connects you with that animal, consciousness.
On that same level, I thought one of the things that I found to be most interesting, but I feel like interesting almost isn't the right word because it was almost heartbreaking for me coming from a culture and a lifestyle where we do keep animals so dear to us. I found that, for the Burkinabe, which is the local people, the animals were so far out of their mind from family, a friend, a part of their lifestyle. It was a food or something that would guard something else, but to kill to an animal there was no heart towards, how sometimes we feel bad when we see roadkill, we feel bad.
Sure.
It was, of course, it's the absolute complete opposite. They thought I was the crazy lady because I cared and loved for my dog. Absolutely insane. The fact that I would let my dog
dog
inside
is
my
fair
house.
game.
Yeah.
In a lot of places.
But
I don't know about their world.
Everything was fair game in their world. So, I was the one who fed my dog, and the fact that I gave him food, they said, how could you? How could you waste food on your dog? So it was, and for me it was...
What kind of dog do you have?
He's Basenji. The barkless Basenji dogs?
No, okay.
It's a primitive African breed. It's
2 minutes?
It's a primitive African dog. So he's mixed. Has like a very similar like greyhound style body, but he's all gray, all brown and white. And they all the dogs there look very, very
acquired
similar.
there?
Oh yes.
And brought back?
Oh yeah.
Good on you. That's hard to do, I think.
It's one of the hardest things I've ever been through.
All right, so as a closing thought, we just killed an hour. How's that? That's pretty quick. If you were to have a message to people, not just young people, but all of us, in your experience and how sheltered we are here in Woodstock and in the States and such, what would your message be if you could, just what do you have to say to the people about your experience, your view, and moving forward in our world?
Well, every time that I talk to people about my story, it's not just my story, it's everybody's story. And I always tell people to open up their world and look around them, because I was always attracted to culture and different lifestyles. And as a kid, you see things on TV and how, those different programs and how they portray things. But you'll never be able to actually understand it until you see it from your own eyes. And I know a lot of people are afraid to go out there and live a different lifestyle, live in a different culture. But I think that, and that's what's holding everybody back. That's what's holding so many people back from being able to experience those things. But I was fortunate enough to be raised not to be afraid, because if somebody else is living that lifestyle, that means that it can be done, and there's nothing negative about it. It's just different. And we're so scared of different things. So whenever I tell people, about my story, I always encourage people to go out there and experience it for themselves and understand that there's nothing to be scared of. It's just different.
Beautiful. Well done. All right. So, like I said, we just killed an hour in a hurry there. And Nahela, your name again?
Nahela.
Nahela.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Of course, if you do go out in the world, and I'm still doing this show, come on back and tell us else what you've got to report out there.
Yeah.
And my hat's off to you, and really wonderful that you're out there, sharing and learning and coming on the show here tonight off the cuff like that. That's really fabulous. So thank you, Paula, for teching again. You're awfully quiet tonight. And we'll see you guys. Yeah, okay. So we'll see you all again next week, Wednesday at 7. George signing off here, and I hope we all have a great week.
Right. Just want to make an announcement.
Okay.
I cut your mics. Stand by. We're going to have a special guest coming from Albany, Kim Krepp, at 10 o'clock. And until then, I'm going to play you a really good DVD about Dr. Klinghardt, and then followed by another Dr. Blaylock, not the one that we know here with the Stop Smart Meters, talking about Wi-Fi. We can always learn more. So stand by.